Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and for this panel about a year of pandemic, what's next for the water industry. So I'm lucky to have today with me leaders from the industry who are well experienced and also coming from a diverse aspect of the industry. So I have people coming from the supplier side, technology, in either treatment or also quality, but also we have the consulting side, we have the research, the utilities, the digital water. So it's very well rounded as a panel. My name is Wahid Khouri from Digitalisation. I'm the general manager of Digitalisation, and I'm pleased to be taking you through the panel for today. We're going to discuss what was the impact of the pandemic, how our leaders faced it early on, what were the lessons learned, and how we can go from there and what the future holds. So I will start by introducing our panelists. You will find also you can ask questions in the Zoom platform. So feel free to type in your questions. We'll try to take some of them later. So first I have Jaime Barba from the CEO of Idrica. So Jaime has more than 21 years working in transformation and digital management, mainly in global omnium with various roles. So Jaime, welcome on the call.
Thank you, welcome, and thank you, Walid, for the opportunity.
Thank you. We also have Hermes, and I'm going by alphabetical order. So also we have Hermes Gonzalez, the president of Hach. Hermes have had multiple leadership roles in Danaher. I was lucky to work with him earlier in my career, and he's been in Danaher for several years, having roles from industrial, leading the PAL industrial business, but also Aquafine Corporation, several roles in water quality, as well as 15 years in Emerson early on. Thank you, Hermes, for joining.
Thank you, Walid. Thank you for the invitation. Great to be here.
Thank you. We have also Jelle from Hannema from Vitens. He's the CEO of chairman of the executive board of Vitens. He's been with the company since 2014 in different roles, and earlier he studied law in '85 and then joined what was back then DHV, known today as Royal Haskoning, DHV. And in this company, had multiple leadership roles, strategic, but also advisory roles for environment and also urban planning and management and zoning. So welcome, Jelle.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And also Professor Dragan Savic. Professor Savic is the CEO of KWR Water Research. I've had a chance to have some video discussions with him earlier during last year. And also he's a professor of hydroinformatics at the University of Exeter in the UK. He brings in 35 years of experience working in engineering, academia, research, mainly being an expert on hydroinformatics and smart water systems. So thank you for joining us, Dragan.
Thanks, Walid, and hello, everyone.
Hello. And next, Lorraine Veltri. Lorraine, I've worked with her and her team on integrated water management as well as digital water. So she's an executive in GHD water business, leading the US water market practice. She has over 30 years of domestic and international experience in all aspects of client and business development, strategic, large program, large projects development, and also in water and wastewater engineering and design management. So thank you for joining us, Lorraine.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Dr. Wilderer. Mirka, she's the CEO of Nora Water Technologies, and she's one of the most recognized leaders and executives in the water industry, with deep experience in corporate strategic and business transformation. She's been recognized in many of the awards, for example, top 100 under 50 executive and emerging leaders, one of the 20 most powerful women in the water industry, to name a few. So thank you for joining us, Mirka.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So before we start, I'd just like to go back to the early days of the pandemic. I mean, this was an unprecedented event, and how was it like? I mean, you're leading large organizations. It's probably one of the most challenging events you'll ever experience as executives in the industry. So how was it like back then? How did you react? What was your priorities? And maybe Hermes, I can start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Walid. Well, I mean, I think needless to say, this is not something that was in my personal nor professional plans. I think it just hit us like a big freight train. But I think, Walid, we had to face the reality of the unknown, right? It was just a big unknown at the time back in the February, March timeframe of last year. I think first and foremost, our number one priority was really to look after the health and safety of our associates, make sure that we sort of understood the proper, procedures that we needed to follow, both for in-plant personnel as well as those that require to continue to work out in the field, mainly our service personnel that needed to continue to support our customers. So that was by far the number one priority. Number two, we needed to make sure that we were able to have some operational continuity. We knew that especially in the drinking water and wastewater treatment sectors, those customers really needed us more than ever. So make sure that we were in a position to continue with our operations, continue to provide them with instrumentation, chemical reagents, everything they needed to guarantee the sort of the continuity of their own businesses. And I would say, last but not least, we had to move significant amount of our workforce, everybody that was not literally on the plant floor, we needed to move them to a virtual work environment, working remotely. So quite a big effort of setting people up with the necessary logistics, right? Making sure that people had, laptops, larger screens to work from home, et cetera. So we spent quite a bit of time really focused on those three priorities. And, it took us a while, right, to sort of get there, maybe 2-3 months to be really fully functional once the first news hit.
Yeah, and I can imagine manufacturing is a challenge because you cannot send everybody home, as you mentioned. So maybe, Mirka, you can talk a little bit from your side also, because you're also on the supplier side and manufacturing.
Sure. I think what we've all learned this past year is that the new business as usual is a business as unusual, as I keep telling the team. And one of our mottos this year that I keep repeating myself when I talk to our team worldwide is expect the unexpected. Let's plan for the worst and then work towards the best, and just really nurture a culture of resilience, adaptability to actually boost innovation as we shape all aspects of the new normal. I think there's been tremendous opportunity on that end as well. But if I reflect back on the first few days and weeks and months of the pandemic, with facilities already in Asia, we were hit with COVID early on, already January. I was supposed to be in Asia and had to cancel the trip, but then it was out there. But then as we are headquartered out of Milan, which was the epicenter for COVID in Europe, that actually hit home for us. And so it really impacted us hard. As I mentioned, I feel like the first few weeks, it was like the rules of the games were changing every 15 minutes. First, trying to execute project in Asia from Europe, then moving westwards, and constantly working on a plan A and then a plan B, and then everything came out differently. So really that uncertainty and flexibility. Now, our founding father, Oronzio de Nora, he used the statement, "Durantes vincunt," he who preserves will win. And so he has luckily left us with the culture that is so used to change and resilience. So that helped us as we were thinking through how can we search forward, how can we be proactive in this ever-changing world and make the best out of it. I think as a leader, what I learned this past year is that I don't have the answers, but I can ask good questions, and then I can provide a platform for the team to come together and then figure it out together as we have a dialogue and a diverse team across the world. So for us, this shift was in truly empowering the team to come up for solutions, looking for innovation in new ways as we go along for it, and maintaining the agile, flexible approach as we went through all of these constant changes. And I keep telling my team, this is not the time for perfect plans. 80% of something is better than 100% of nothing. So similar, like Hermes said, right, of course, employee health and wellness were key priorities in this early time, making sure we keep minimal staff in the plant, but in the field, but set everyone else up for working from home. I think the only addition I would add is not just the physical health, but also the emotional and psychological health was a big topic for us, making sure that everyone's situation at home was a little different, whether you have someone that had COVID that you need to take care of, children at home for homeschooling. I mean, we had the whole bandwidth of challenges from a personal side, and as that starts to blend into work, how do we help our employees to deal with all of that too?
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Mirka. And from the utilities side, I mean, Jelle, you're the recipient on the other side of the equation, but also you have to deliver water and services to the communities. So what was it like?
Yes, well, thank you. Bringing back a year ago when the crisis got in. It was March last year when in the Netherlands the COVID virus arrived. And what was important that our government took action. And what was important with that is that the government said that the drinking water was marked as a vital importance. So that gave us some advantages. For instance, getting our employees, their children to school and those kind of things. But the first thing we did is, of course, it was no surprise that Corona of COVID came in, and we had a crisis team. We had some scenarios. And the first thing, of course, is that you are questioning how can we assure that our continuity will be there. That's one thing. And the other thing is, of course, what about the quality of the water? Can COVID infect the quality of water? Well, happily in the Netherlands, we have KWR, and KWR had a very quick and clear answer. No, there is no danger, so no risk, security risk for the quality of water, for drinking water. So that was very helpful to know that. And then the first thing we had to do is to guarantee the delivery of water. But in our Vitens company, I have to tell something about the context. We have about 100 production plants where we extract water, groundwater, purify it, and bring it into the distribution system. And we have about 150 locations next in our distribution network. It's about storage, it's about pumps. Altogether, we have a network and we have operations we need operations for about 250 locations. And we can all do that on distance. So there was no quality issue, there was no delivering issue. So that was very, very important for us. So the delivering of the water was, supply of water was guaranteed. And then we had three priorities next to that. There was one, making sure that our employees were safe. Immediately we could realize that almost everybody could work from home. We had a very strong ICT network. We strengthened it. And of course, Microsoft helped us a little bit with improving Teams, etc. But it appeared that it was possible to let the people work from home. It was very, very important for us. So that was our first priority. Our next priority were our clients, of course. We have mechanics coming at our clients. Then we had a policy that they stopped the non-urgent visits. And later on, the regime got some less severe. but it was very important to avoid contact between our mechanics and our clients. So that was the third priority. And the last priority, very important, filling in our social responsibility, because we had many projects running, investment projects, projects to improve, to strengthen and expand our infrastructure. And that's important, of course, but on the other hand, we didn't want that our contractors would fall down, because we need them very much. We got a big investment program for the next coming years. So it was very important to keep our contractors in business, and we could do that in a safe way. So we could continue our investment projects. So that was very important. And so all by all, and I need to say, in some way, I like crisis, because it challenges yourself, it challenges your organization. But I think we managed very well, and we appear to be very flexible and resilient to deal with these new challenges. And so I'm very proud of our employees, because like Mirka said, and other people in this panel said, it's really challenging working from home, with your family or without family, happy or unhappy. Well, everything what's in normal life, it's all sharper, deeper. So when people are not really in a good shape, that asks lots of attention of Vitens as an employer. And I think so far we managed very well. So all in all, we are in a new normal, and I like to stress normal, but it shouldn't be normal, but it feels like that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, Jelle, what you mentioned on keeping the contractors running in business and keeping it resilient, this makes me go to the next question, because we had 70% of attendees on this call mentioning that they believe the water industry was resilient to the pandemic. And I have a question that came earlier from Andy Blackhole. Looking back, was our industry well prepared for the pandemic? Did it prove to be resilient? And what level of planning did we have before the pandemic? And what has the sector learned?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think it shows that the industry was always risk averse, because it provides the basic service for public health service. That is usually forgotten about water. You know what the first advice was when Corona crisis hit us was wash your hands. And we forget, if you don't have supply of water in your house, you will not be able to do that. And quite a lot of other consequences could come from not having access to water and sanitation. So I think the water industry has proven to be very resilient, because I haven't heard that due to the Corona situation, they stopped the services, or the level of service has kind of fallen down. And Jelle just said that they've been preparing for various situations, maybe not for this one, but all those preparations and risk assessments that have been done in the industry has helped them to reach the point where, we still have high quality water 24-hour days, 7 days a week, which I think we should spare a thought for parts of the world who don't have that and who have been proportionally much more affected by this coronavirus, GDP impact and everything else, health, education, and income.
Yeah, thank you, Dragan. And Lorraine, you advise a lot the utilities. So what do you think? Was it resilient?
Yes, my short answer is yes, I think so. I also think the very nature of what we do in the water industry has prepared us for problem solving, critical and creative thinking, and that comes naturally to us scientists and engineers, right? I'll also say that our US water systems have survived other community disasters, including massive wildfires, earthquakes, floods, tornadoes, and hurricanes. So we've had tools, procedures, and redundancies in place to manage emergencies for many years. I will also say that we have learned a few lessons as a result of this pandemic, and it has impacted our business at GHD in several ways. In particular, how we operate and how we adapt to change. As with many organizations that you've already heard from, the role of the office and the rise of remote working have indelibly changed our business. Remote working is here to stay. And hopefully our offices will likely become places for collaboration and inspiration. And I'll also add that I have witnessed that with this uncertainty, this great uncertainty, came confidence from our people and a renewed agility and openness to change that has sometimes lagged in our industry. You know, we're talking about engineers here. But we've always been available to our clients, and we took innovative steps with our daily interactions internally and externally through virtual meetings just like this, virtual webinars and seminars, and really focused on meaningful and deliberate thought leadership pieces that we put out into the industry. Thank you.
Yeah, that's true. So like when we talk about resiliency, and we always spoke about like how the industry is risk adverse, you know, and maybe it helped us this time because we were more resilient, as Dragan mentioned about the risk adverse, and it's always conflict with innovation and so on. So one of the innovative themes that came during the pandemic was more on the wastewater-based epidemiology, WBE. I mean, in some part of the world it was known, but commonly it was unknown in many parts of the world, but it took center stage during the pandemic. And have we seen some tangible results, or is it going to stay, or is this just a hype? So Hermes, maybe you can connect us together, because in terms of the resiliency and also moving to this technology.
Good question, Walid. I mean, I think in our case, during the second half of the year, we did see a significant increase in the level of interest from various organizations around WBE in general, right? I think the premise was, hey, we can get ahead of the curve, identify possible outbreaks, and maybe we can have a 2 to 3 weeks actually notice on a possible outbreak. As such, companies like ourselves, we were able to work with customers on installing wastewater surveillance systems, really most of that based on sampling, automatic sampling, so helping customers doing automatic sampling at different collection points around cities, et cetera, and then they would send those samples to a laboratory, and they would get the sort of the presence absence notice based on those installations. I would say, however, that at least half of those that we were working with were mostly research entities. So a lot of universities had this level of interest throughout North America. We did work with some organizations in Europe as well. But I think the hope here is that this will not sort of fade away. And unfortunately, we're starting to see some signs that it may be fading away. Sort of as some areas, especially in North America, we're starting to see a significant reduction in COVID cases. But what we hope, and I think what we want to work with the industry to do is, could we utilize this experience really where COVID was a catalyst to do surveillance and really create a stronger infrastructure around water-based epidemiology, not just to detect COVID, but any future contaminants or any future outbreaks that may happen. And I think in order to do that, we need to go beyond just working with research universities. So the first step, we're starting to see some positive signs in areas where you can really clearly identify the sources of presence. So, for example, government buildings, quite a bit of interest from jails, actually, where you have a self-contained population. So you can clearly identify the sort of the sample points and where the contamination is coming from. Military bases, for example, is another good example. So hopefully, we need to get out of the research environment into more tangible applications that would serve a specific population. And I think the next step is really to shorten the amount of time with, sort of from the moment that you do the sampling until the moment you get the result. Right now, most universities or government buildings, et cetera, they're sending those samples to centralized laboratories. So they may take, 24 to 36 hours to get the results back. So we've started to work with some partner companies that could develop specific COVID assays, for example, sort of qPCR type testing that you could do on site, and you could get a more immediate result and tell you whether COVID is present or not. And those assays you can actually tailor make, in the future to detect other types of contaminants in the water. So we've made inroads. I think it looks promising, but there's still quite a bit of work to be done, Valid, I believe.
Yeah, and to complement what you're saying, Hermes, I think Jaime, you've worked a lot with your team on connecting all of this together between the sampling but also other data points.
Yeah, I would like to tell our experience with that, because in February, March of the last year, we had just recently expanded our laboratory. So when came pandemic, we had maybe the lucky, if can we tell this, that we had been analyzing the hepatitis B inside the sewer networks. So we had microbiology cabins, we had the people trained, we had certifyings for all of this. And also we had IT systems that were integrating all the information, the sample planning, the work order management, the GIS, even the LIMS, all the software of the laboratory. We had all of that over our GoAgua platform. And what happened to that, to us, is that it was easy for us to deliver to the public administration a solution to make a big amount of samples. And in the final months of March, we signed a contract with the Ministry of Spain, and we started to deliver this service. So they were monitoring what was happening, and the results, from our point of view, the results are good enough. But it's important that we take this information combined with other information. It's really good for the administration, but they need to combine. And especially it's good for alerting of new waves. When you are in good position of COVID in your area, the system alert you that is coming a new wave or a new peak of the virus. For example, we alerted in some cities about a neighborhood that was especially contaminated, and they confined in that city the neighborhood, just the neighborhood. This kind of results. Or for example, we help to give transparency in some places where there is maps and the citizens can see the affection of COVID in some areas. So I think that administration has understood that this is a good solution, and that is not just for COVID. As Hermes has explained, it's for a lot of things, for microplastics, for antibiotics, for drugs. It's going to be used, of course, for spills, but every one of us were working on spills just before of pandemic. So I think that is a solution to stay and to research on it.
Yeah, and I think it depends on countries that are thinking more, digital and innovation. And so I was involved in some of the projects in the Middle East, but I think Professor Savic, Dragan, you're more familiar with all of this because you work also globally with multiple through the alliance and we had the discussion in August. Can you tell us what you think from your side?
We've been working on this wastewater-based epidemiology for over 10 years throughout Europe, and in the Netherlands we've been collecting these samples, as I said, for over 10 years now in 6 cities and at Schiphol Airport and a few smaller tourist places. And, everything we metabolize ends up in the wastewater. So we've been looking into illicit drugs, into other health issues. And that's why we had the samples in February that we could test again for this SARS-CoV-2 and found that in February in the Netherlands we didn't have them, and then in March samples we have them. So since then, the whole country is now covered, all 300 plus wastewater treatment works, and it's done by the government institute, environmental institute that is doing that throughout the country. I know that in the UK they are going to do the national program. So it's not going to die down. We are now doing over 100 cities in Europe. So research groups, consultancies, and other research institutes have come together through European Union funding to do this type of analysis through larger cities here. And as Hermes mentioned, we're now doing it for larger office buildings. There is a program for schools and so on. So I think we've learned fairly quickly that it's much more kind of easier to test the entire population that is gravitating towards one wastewater treatment works than to go to each individual and test them. And having the information from the health professionals and testing in people and what we do in sewers, it's the best combination of knowledge. If we add on that few other pieces of information like socioeconomic, age profiles of people, then we could do much, much more to target hotspots, to target where, for example, vulnerable people live who need help with this. Quite a lot of things. One thing that I would like just to add is that there is no, who said that something, there is no, don't waste a crisis. And we in the water sector haven't done that this time, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Dragan. And so clearly WE is one of the things that will define our future. And maybe I can go to Jelle now for the question of how has the pandemic redefined the future of water utilities? And you're one of the utilities. And what does the water utility of the future look like?
Well, I think there are two very important components answering that question. One is, and it has been said before in this discussion, this digitalization. I think we found out that there are far more possibilities of digitalizations as we were aware before the crisis got in, and we are exploring those possibilities. And there are many, many options to explore, but to apply. And the interesting thing is that may I say, because I'm almost 60, our older people, our older employees, they weren't really into digital solutions. And now, because they were forced to work with new solutions from home, well, internally, we saw a speeding up people being aware and competent in working with all kinds of digital solutions. So that gives for us a breakthrough in our company to speed up with the introduction of new digital solutions, and it will speed up thinking, and we are doing that already now, about the way of working and working together. And that will be different. And it's in many industries, but in our industry, it's for sure. Because, but that's the second component, we got even more aware than we already were how important our business is concerning health and environment. And I'm speaking, of course, from the Dutch context, and our processes were well controlled concerning water quality, etc., etc. But now we see that we got, how do you say that, confronted with the concept that making water, making drinking water, we are part of a bigger system, and we really need to take care of that bigger system. So as I speak for the Vitens company, we are even more aware than we already were to connect with society, to connect with our natural surroundings, and to do our work even more connected with these surroundings, investing in positive impact of the drinking water company as we are. So these are the two components for us: digitalization and providing sustainable operations. Very much aware of the issue of health.
Thank you, Jelle. And Hermes, I mean, digitization also is one of the biggest topics for you guys. And so what do you think about the future of the water utilities?
Yeah, thanks, Walid. I fully agree with what Jelle has mentioned. And I actually want to link this back to your question around, has the industry proven to be resilient? I think, as you rightly mentioned, and our panelists have agreed, the answer is yes. My question is, at what cost has the industry proven to be resilient? It's taking a lot of muscle, a lot of heavy lifting for the industry to continue to provide all of those services. Had we been better prepared on the digital side of the equation, I think we would have proven to be resilient at a lower cost. So I think some lessons that we have learned on our customers, we obviously we depend on our customers and working with them on coming on board. The digital enablement of our industry needs to accelerate. We need to make sure that we are in a better position for the next pandemic or crisis. We need to be able to access information remotely, seamlessly, right? In a way that is secure. By the way, cybersecurity plays a very important role here, the protection of critical data and the communication and the handling of that data. But we need to be able to provide our customers meaningful and actionable information remotely. So, when we had to de-densify the operations of drinking and wastewater facilities, your subject matter expertise and maybe you had the luxury of having, on site got dispersed, right? Because we just couldn't have enough people on site. So having your devices digitally enabled, providing meaningful information to optimize your instrumentation, to help you optimize your processes, et cetera, is something that we've learned that it needs to be accelerated. And again, it goes back to being a very conservative industry. The other thing that I want to mention is around cross-training opportunities. A lot of the larger facilities, when they had to de-densify their operations, they had subject matter experts for certain processes, certain aspects of the facility. And when you had to let go of half of your workforce because you couldn't have as many people on site, you lost sort of that expertise. So how do we use the digital arena via augmented reality, for example, to make sure that you provide 24 hours, 7 days a week, scalable training programs for the industry that can be accessed globally, right? In a way that is readily available, and you don't need to send people on site to physically train your personnel. So there's so many avenues of a lead that we can take, and we're exploring with our customers. So hopefully we won't let this opportunity go by, and we'll continue down the path of accelerating the digitalization of the industry.
Thank you, Hermes. I think you touched also on one of the questions that came from Gerard Cook about the security and protecting water supplies. Now it's becoming more critical. I think this is a full blown up panel that we can have around security for water assets, and we can take it like later in the future. But before I move to the next question, Jaime, what do you think about how the future has been redefined for the water utilities?
Yeah, of course, the pandemic is one of the questions that the participant has made. Of course, that the pandemic has accelerated the digitizing agenda. I think that before the pandemic, we had people inside all the utilities that they had the view of digitizing the utility. We imagine a utility in the future where in the wastewater plant we receive which spills we are going to receive, and we treat, we decide the things inside the plant operation depending on that. We receive information about the weather, and we decide to switch on or off our reactor because of the information that we are receiving. Or we are alerting of leakages inside the households because we have a smart metering and we know the patterns of consumption, we can alert them. Or we decide which is the time to make our work in the operation just because we have a digital twin, and we can try that the day before that operation. So that's going to happen, and everyone wants to go to this situation. What happened before the pandemic is that inside the companies, we hadn't the leaders to do that sometimes, because we need to be brave inside the companies to change the processes for this to happen. Of course, in the companies that we have here, we have the leader. We all have the leaders, but we work around the world, and not all the companies have these skills to do this job. What has happened from our point of view after this pandemic, and we are living that in what we are doing in different countries, is that now there is that leaders even in the companies that are not so big, so innovative, that we are used to talk in these events. So now we have these leaders, and it's going to happen.
Thank you, Jaime. I'm going to shift a little bit course, and since you're talking about leaders and people, and maybe I can go to you, Dr. Wilderer. Like early days of the pandemic, there was a study by McKinsey about that women has added 18 hours on average per week in terms of further workload due to the pandemic. Because of the lockdowns, you had kids at home, they have to take care more of their kids, but at the same time working and so on. And across the pandemic, we've kept seeing more reports about gender equality impacted by COVID. So what do you think about the impact in the water industry? I know you're very engaged in those topics.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a recession that, as we have seen by the statistics that you have referenced here, has hit women harder than men with work coming into the homes. I don't know if we have specific water numbers, but in the last 12 months, 2.3 million departed from the workforce. That is the lowest female participation in over 30 years. So we're clearly going backwards. For my own business, I've said, for every role that we're filling, I want to at least see a female candidate. And the headhunters keep telling me that they cannot find any qualified, diverse candidates for positions that I'm trying to fill. Now, I find that hard to believe. And I'm concerned that this is an area where we're missing an opportunity. I think especially in times where we need to drive innovation, it has been proven that innovation is born from more diverse organization, and we're going backwards. So are we also going backwards in our capabilities of truly innovating? So I think it's a very strong area of concern. At the Nora, we have launched in this year what we call Each for Equal work group, where we try to enhance the degree of diversity, equity, inclusion in our organization. Our vision is to leverage all available talents as that catalyst for a sustainable future. I think, as I mentioned earlier, as the new business is unusual, is a very dynamic, unexpected, ever-evolving environment, we need to look for the inspiration and the problem solving in unconventional spaces, right? And so how do we create this unconventional voice in our dialogue? For us, it's been going away from a very hierarchical command and control style to more of an entrepreneurial network of what we call teams of teams, with participants from all types of different areas of the world, functional backgrounds, to really tap into that cognitive diversity that we already have that we want to enrich though. And I think, it needs that creating value-rich connection. It needs a culture of collaboration and mutual respect for different points of views. And it was mentioned before, but it requires courageous, I call it courageous conversation. You're gonna not hear the common theme, you're gonna hear new ideas, and you have to be willing to do that type of bold experimentation with unfamiliar ideas and really not limit our thinking with the mainstream of what we've done in the past, but allow ourselves to rethink the future. And so I personally encourage all leaders in the water space to create these opportunities for all available talents to participate in that dialogue, whether it is from different color, culture, gender, or other orientations, right? And so you're right, it is a passion topic of myself. I'm in the process of building what I call a network diversity in water to celebrate that diversity and look for an opportunity to highlight topics of relevance, but also the accomplishments of emerging leaders from maybe different backgrounds.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and it's more important than ever today, especially in these circumstances. Yeah. So Lorraine, what do you think?
You're going to hear some very similar comments from me that you've heard from Mirka, of course. I accepted the position as GHD's U.S. water market leader during this pandemic after I'd retired from the industry, as you said, thank you very much, after more than 30 years of hard work. I will say that GHD has been very open and overt about the goals of a more inclusive, fair, and gender equal workforce, workplace, and leadership team. And I do have some statistics, and maybe it's the same McKinsey study that you referenced, Walid, but the study has shown that 1 in 4 women are considering leaving the workforce versus 1 in 5 men. And while all women have been impacted, 3 major groups have experienced some of the largest challenges. Of course, working mothers, as you'd imagine, women in senior management positions like us, Mirka, and Black women. So the other statistics that I have down here is that fewer than 30% of U.S. engineers, fewer than 30% of U.S. engineers in the private sector today are women, and less than 18% are engineering managers. So as a female leader, I know we still have a lot of work to do, and equality, mutual respect, and fairness are what's very important to me as we grow, especially our water practice in GHD in North America. I will say that we are taking, as Mirka said, deliberate steps to combat this challenge. And we've recently welcomed a global inclusion and diversity leader to GHD globally, as I said. And your question, was it the pandemic or was it other social justice issues challenging our society that drove this step? I don't know. I do know we're going to continue to lose out from this engineering imbalance of female perspectives, smart ideas, innovations, hard work, communication styles, collaboration styles, and leadership without roles like these that lead to the sometimes, and as Mirka said, difficult and uncomfortable conversations that are required for this kind of change and growth. And the last bit I'll say about GHD and my recent experience here, we're extremely proud of the diversity of our 2021 North American Principals and Associates cohort, of which I am one, a new GHD principal. And so as an employee owner and leader within our firm, I know my voice is important, and I also know and feel that it is really being heard.
That's great. And Dragan, I think we had a discussion around it earlier, like in one of the videos about the pandemic and the impact on women. So what do you think?
As a poster boy, over 60, white male, basically there is no improvement in any industry if we do not support diversity and inclusion, because only by doing that we can be more resilient, more innovative, and better. And I cannot emphasize enough that we need to have that in every pore of our society and also in our business.
So since we're talking about the impact of the pandemic, and you know, Dragan, that I work a lot on Africa, where we have challenges in meeting the United Nations sustainability goals, you know, SDG 6, for example, for the water. What do you think the pandemic is it going to make it worse, or what will happen?
It's definitely going to make it more difficult to get to the SDG goals by 2030. The impacts, I'm lucky to live in a country that has social programs and support for people who are affected by this pandemic and this unprecedented financial crisis. And just imagine, for me, the difference would be having a job, not having a job, you know, how much money I would receive every month. For some people, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, that means the difference between malnutrition and being able to feed the family. That means being able to, for girls to go to school, get better education, get sanitation in school. That's the reason why in some countries they cannot get to school. And so, again, I think proportionally the impact on low-income and medium-income countries, it's much higher of this pandemic. For them, you know, financial crisis is much more serious. And also for the water sector as well. Everything around it, the food production, the food, you know, now because of the pandemic, there is, you know, they have to work more in order to get the water for cooking and for providing sanitation for the family. So I think we cannot imagine how much we've gone backwards with SDGs because of the COVID situation.
Yeah, correct. And that's why we need to be more involved in Africa as leaders, our industry leaders, try as much as possible to push through from our global points. Yeah.
Absolutely. If I can add just one more thing. One thing that I see very positive is that the water companies from the West have realized that SDGs are also important for them as well. And lots of them have the involvement in providing the basic services in low-income and medium-income countries. I mean, Jelle, and he's part of a larger organization that do that, and I'm sure Jaime as well.
That's great. And we're running out a little bit of time, so maybe we can do this question in a concise way. It's an important one that came from Brian Cruz earlier. So the pandemic affected everything from staffing limitations to technology adoption, as we discussed, so digital solutions and so on, or remote work policies. So what changes do you think are short-term versus long-term, and how the pandemic's financial impact impacted infrastructure upgrades?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like to look at the positive side, as referenced earlier. The quote is from Winston Churchill: "Don't let a good crisis go wasted." And so what can we use this crisis for? To not go backwards, but to go forward. I mean, short term, clearly, we had to adjust the way we engage our customers, but is there a long-term opportunity? And I think it was also mentioned earlier that water tends to be very risk averse, and with that, a bit of a lagger in innovation. And so I view as this COVID pandemic as an opportunity to shake up and to wake up the water space, and to especially introduce digital technologies, as we have discussed here earlier, accelerate. I think many of us had the plans and the roadmaps for digital transformation sort of in the drawer, but it went from, yeah, it's nice to have, but customers won't accept this, so now we have to do it. And so if you think about change management, and usually the hardest part is the unfreezing of the old, before you even can create something new. In this situation, we had just everything, and whether we liked it or not, involuntarily unfrozen. And so using this as an opportunity to point to some of those really needed changes to modernize and to innovate our industry. And I do think that the digital transformation of the water space is something for us to stay, as we not only look at the quality of products we're providing to our customers, but also the way how we're doing it, and leveraging the technologies, whether it's, it was mentioned earlier, augmented reality, to look customers virtually over the shoulder. We have implemented what we call the Nora Via for that, or other tools to help us to interact in a more modern ways. And with that, shaping the new normal much more proactively.
Yeah, you had, I saw you raised your hand. If you can do it in 1 minute, so we give.
Yes, I understand. A very quick one. I fully agree with Mirka, but that's what's happening, what we will do within our organizations. But I should think we should redefine the interaction between health, nature, agriculture, physical planning. And I would say that the water system is a thread through these teams. I would say that as a water industry, we should take initiative to make a vision of a new and a better and sustainable world, because water is carrying life. So I think we have, that's our legacy, I would say. That's from the past, and we have to bring that legacy to the future.
I agree with you. And Hermes, what do you think about?
Yeah, just maybe a couple of comments to reinforce what Mirka and Jelle mentioned. Yeah. We have learned to work in a different way. Let's not forget about that. And we've proven that, results can be delivered in a different way. So I think, hopefully we're not going to go backwards. I continue to accelerate. And I think the point that Jelle mentioned is very important. We've really maybe focused the discussion here on the treatment aspect of water and the delivery of water. But I think we need to step back and look at the entire ecosystem. And maybe that's where Jelle was going is, we even haven't touched about the environmental impact of open water, oceans, rivers, reservoirs, which are a very important part of the ecosystem. So I think maybe Jelle, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's where you were going in terms of stepping back and looking at the larger ecosystem, making sure that we understand that.
Yeah. I'd like to thank you all for your time. We ran out of time. We only were able to take 2 questions from the audience. So thank you all for being here. And the video will be recorded and people will be able to re-access it later. So thanks again, and thanks for our attendees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.